Right, here we go. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually going to teach the class. I have one student today, and he's willing to allow you to be in his class. So what we're going to do today is really kind of cool. We're going to switch from Greek mythology into Roman mythology, and I'm going to be honest with you. Great, all the textings are going to come in on my recording. Not much I can do with Roman mythology because a lot of the stories are just not age appropriate, right? A lot of them are origin stories. Okay, let me turn my notifications. Yeah, that's going to annoy us both, isn't it? Okay, notifications off. Okay, so a couple things about our story today. Well, the Romans are a bunch of copycats, okay? That's the bottom line. So I want you to turn to page 5. Those of you who have the digital copy at home. What you're going to do today is we're going to read the same story twice. It's going to seem like the same story twice, but really it's the Greek version and the Roman version. And you're going to go, but Mrs. Hensel, they copied. And I'm going to go, yeah, they did. So what's the difference between copying and plagiarism? Okay, so and it's a fine line. So when you copy someone, it's the greatest form of flattery. You know, we have people at school, they enjoy fads, Crocs. Did everybody have to go copy everybody and get a pair of Crocs? Yeah. Certain brands, a lot of Teslas out there, a lot of copycats, right? Driving Teslas. Got to drive the brand, right? Copying in and of itself, not so bad as long as you kind of put your own little spin on it, right? When it comes to literature, though, right? Plagiarism is a no-go. Okay, so first and foremost, we're going to talk about copying and pasting. And I actually give kids the benefit of the doubt. You're going to plagiarize, or if you haven't already, all kids do it. I've never had a student walk in my door that hasn't plagiarized. And the reason is it sounds really good on the internet. The wording is amazing. And kids just don't know how to write it that good. Well, they shouldn't know how to write it that good. An adult probably wrote that, who's got a higher education, who has credible information that they would never have. So what do you do instead? You give that person credit, you quote them, then you explain what the quote means. And then you don't plagiarize. Then you don't get a 0 on your assignment. And it should be a 0 because you've stolen someone else's work and you've done 0. That's why you get a 0, right? The new thing with plagiarism, and by the way, I did forget to define it. Plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work and passing it off as one's own. Just recently in the last year, my high school kids, I've had a couple. You would think they would know not to use ChatGPT, not to use an AI tool, but nope.
My teachers, they have like this tool and this thing.
All teachers have that tool.
Yeah, and they can see what sources.
Yes. Yes. So let me ask you this, just hypothetically. Let's say you wanted to apply to Stanford for college, and your college essay with your admissions, you decide to put it into the ChatGPT and let it write the essay for you, and you submit that essay on your application. What's going to happen?
You're gonna get like
Rejected. They're probably going to laugh at you.
Like I thought you could get away with that like before, like a few years ago with AI. It's not possible.
And by the way, I've used AI. I've literally had it write a story for me. I need a story about this, this, and this. And it wrote the story. And I actually did like a little test to see how it would go.
Mm-hmm.
All of my students hated it. It's not the same. You know, they have all this, they can take all this information from different places, but they're missing the human elements, the emotion, the feelings. And you feel that it feels cold and it feels like it doesn't matter. So yeah, you can't cheat. And you certainly can't do that. You can't steal someone else's work at a job and take credit for someone else's work. That's going to get you fired, right? So it's really fascinating here. Okay, so why did the Greeks and the Romans have the same story? Well, first of all, do you know geographically where Greece and Rome are?
They're close.
They're neighbors. Okay, so remember that Greek and Roman mythology was thousands of years ago. Did they have pen and paper? Did they have the internet? So they pass down stories through oral tradition. So let's say a Roman goes to Greece, visits his buddy and his buddy's families, and they're telling stories by the fire. A couple weeks later, he goes back to Rome and says, I got some stories. I got me some news stories. And then he puts in some Roman names just to kind of tweak them and make them sound good. And bam, you got a Roman story. Okay, so many Roman myths, spoiler, were copied versions of stories from other cultures, not just Greece, other cultures. The Romans were polytheistic, so they worshipped thousands of gods. As they expanded their empire, they discovered new gods worshipped by other cultures, so they adopted them. Well, when they discovered the Greek gods, which by the way are fabulous, they liked them all. They copied them all. Um, when they did this, though, they changed the names. Zeus became Jupiter. Hera became Juno. Apollo was one of the few Greek gods whose name did not change. And in our story today, Io's name is the same in both stories, and only because she's not a god. She's a water nymph. The Romans changed the personalities to fit the Roman culture and belief system. So Jupiter was really the king of the gods, ruler of the heavens. He didn't leave. He liked to rule from his domain. If you wanted a Jupiter, you had to fly up to him. Zeus, remember, he liked to go down to earth and cause trouble. He liked to disguise himself and check on the people on earth. Hera was a vindictive and jealous wife, always constantly looking for her husband. Remember poor Echo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then Juno, I actually like Juno. Juno and Jupiter have a much better relationship. Juno is the Roman queen of all the gods, and she actually has a role to watch over the women of Rome, watch over the children, the household. She can be jealous, she can be vindictive, but really that's kind of a Greek thing. Okay, so I'm gonna share, I'm gonna read the first story for y'all. This is the Greek version. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the first white page in here, page 1. Once upon a time, a long time ago, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades were the 3 sons of Cronos. When Cronos retired, the boys divided the world up between them. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon took the sea, and Hades ruled under the earth, the home of the dead. At first, it was great fun, but things had been just a bit slow lately. Zeus thought about what he could do. He could turn himself into an octopus and visit his brother Poseidon under the sea, but he didn't feel much like a swim. He could visit Hades under the earth, but Hades was such a gloomy fellow. He could hurl thunderbolts, but it wasn't much fun without a target. He could hunt up one of the other gods, but the truth was all the other gods were terrified of Zeus. He did have a terrible temper, but only when someone lied to him. Since the gods often lied, they mostly avoided Zeus. He could call for his wife Hera, but the truth was Zeus was a little frightened of his wife Hera. He could find a beautiful woman, but he couldn't let Hera catch him. His wife Hera was very, very jealous. Zeus flew down to earth and looked around for something to do. He spotted 2 men walking along a lane. Zeus cast his voice to make it sound like somebody else was speaking. He was very good at that. Hey, stupid! Zeus cast his voice loudly, hoping to start a fight. One man turned to the other angrily. What did you say? And before you could say Zeus, fists were flying. Zeus found that very funny. So I'm going to stop right here in the story because this is juvenile behavior. This is childlike behavior from the most powerful God. Does it paint the gods in a favorable light? No. And that is the message at the end of the story. We're going to talk about the gods were in such a powerful position and really kind of selfish in doing things that they wanted to do. And they often inflicted harm on other people indirectly in their selfishness. So the story's going to turn here a little bit. A glint on the river caught his eye. It was Io, a lovely river nymph. Nymph, what a lovely young woman, Zeus said. Stop right there. Don't turn the page yet. He promptly fell in love. Okay, this is ridiculous. He promptly fell in love. kind of reminds me of Echo and Narcissus a little bit. You
Yeah.
took one look at her and fell in love. You've never talked to her. You don't know her. You haven't tried to get to know her, but you fell in love with her. Okay, so also really paints Zeus in an unfavorable light, right? Go to the next page. Hoping to hide himself from the eagle eye of his jealous wife, Zeus covered the world with some really thick clouds. Then he flew down to Io. But Hera was not stupid. The thick coat of clouds made her suspicious immediately. Zeus looked up. It's Hera, he gulped. Quickly, Zeus changed Io into a cow. By the way, this is brilliant. A beautiful, water nymph is probably a beautiful woman, and now it's an ugly cow. It was genius, really. When Hera landed, all she found was an innocent looking Zeus standing next to a little white cow. How often do you see a white cow? Right. So maybe that was a little bit of a mistake. So a couple things I want to mention here. Why did Hera think that something was up when she saw this thick coat of clouds?
Because it just formed out of the blue.
Anything else? He said it just formed out of the blue. Anything else?
Zeus, maybe Zeus is like known for doing it.
He's so good. Say that really loud.
Maybe Zeus is known for doing it.
He has a history of doing stuff like this. You got it. You were one of the few people who got that this week. Good for you. Yes. Then he says, when Hera landed, she sees Zeus. This little cow appeared out of nowhere, he told his wife, acting surprised. Hera was not fooled. What a beautiful cow, she gushed admiringly. May I have it as a present? Not knowing what else to say, Zeus had to agree. Hera sent the cow away under guard. So why would she send the cow away under guard? Remove it from her husband. I'm in control now, right? Zeus, though, he's not done here. He arranged for Io to be rescued and set free. He sent his son Apollo to sing the guard asleep, and when the guard closed his eyes, Io ran away. Okay, this is just going to make Hera mad. When Hera heard about it, she sent a gadfly after Io. A gadfly is a fly that bites. Moo, moo, Io screamed when the gadfly found her. Io swam across the sea, hoping the gadfly would drown on the trip. No such luck. Although Hera did name the sea between Greece and Rome after Io, perhaps you've heard of it, the Ionian Sea, no matter. Feeling very sorry for himself, a dispirited Io traveled next to Egypt. It was then that Hera decided that Io had suffered enough. First, she made Zeus promise that he would never see Io again. Then she changed Io back into human form and left her in Egypt. Egypt was a dismal place for a river nymph. There are crocodiles in the Nile. Back in Greece, Zeus gave a big sigh. Surely there was something he could do. All right, y'all ready? Okay, so even those of you at home, you're going to listen to the second recording and follow along. It's hard enough to read the first version, so I recorded the second version. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to listen for any differences, and I want you to tell me at the end of the story, is this plagiarism? You ready? Okay, here we go. This is the Roman myth, Jupiter, Juno, and little Io. Jupiter was the king of all the gods. Ably assisted by his two brothers, Pluto, who Jupiter put in charge of the underworld, and Neptune, who Jupiter put in charge of the seas, Jupiter ruled the heavens, the earth, and all life. No god was more powerful than Jupiter. No major decision was made without Jupiter's approval. It was nice being in charge, but sometimes Jupiter found things a bit boring. Jupiter thought about what he could do. He could turn himself into an octopus and visit his brother Neptune under the sea, but he didn't feel much like a swim. He could visit Pluto under the earth, but Pluto was such a gloomy fellow. He could hurl thunderbolts, but it wasn't much fun without a target. He could hunt up one of the other gods, but the truth was all the other gods were terrified of Jupiter. He did have a terrible temper, but only when someone lied to him. Since the gods often lied, they mostly avoided Jupiter. He could call for his wife Juno, but the truth was, Juno was very busy. It was nearing the day of her festival, March the 1st, when all the married women in Rome celebrated her and thanked her for all she did for them. Juno was busy whispering suggestions in many a matron's ear. Jupiter almost never visited Earth, but he did watch over it. From the heavens, Jupiter spotted two men walking along a lane. Jupiter threw his voice down to earth, making it sound like someone speaking. He was very good at that. Hey, stupid! Jupiter cast his voice loudly, hoping to start a fight. One man turned to the other angrily. What did you say? And before you could say Jupiter, the two men were fighting. Jupiter found that very funny. A glint on the river caught his eye. It was Io, a lovely river nymph. What a lovely young woman, Jupiter said. Jupiter covered heaven and earth with some really thick clouds and brought Io up to visit him. The thick coat of clouds made Juno suspicious. Jupiter looked up. It's Juno, he blinked. Quickly, Jupiter changed Io into a cow. When Juno appeared by his side, all she found was an innocent-looking Jupiter standing next to a little white cow. This little cow appeared out of nowhere, he told his wife, acting surprised. Juno wasn't fooled. What a beautiful cow, she gushed admiringly. May I have it as a present? Jupiter had to agree. Juno sent the cow away under guard. Jupiter arranged for Io to be rescued and set free. He sent his son Apollo to sing the guard asleep. When the guard closed his eyes, Apollo flew Io back to her river, but he forgot to change Io back into human form. When Juno heard that Io had escaped, she sent a gadfly after Io. A gadfly is a fly that bites. Moo, moo, Io screamed when the gadfly found her. Io swam awkwardly to the mouth of the river where it joins the sea, hoping the gadfly would not follow her. Cows are not the best of swimmers. Moo, moo, Io screamed when the gadfly found her again. Feeling very sorry for herself, a dispirited Io traveled next to Egypt. Egypt was a dismal place for a river nymph. There are no crocodiles in the Tiber as there are in the Nile. When Juno heard about it, she decided Io had suffered enough. She flew to Egypt and changed Io back into her original form. Thank you, Juno, Io cried humbly. Yes, well, mumbled Juno, her mind on her festival. Find a husband, child. She flew quickly away, leaving poor Io in Egypt. Io, after all, was a river nymph. Sighing heavily all the way, Io swam home. What do you think? Plagiarism?
More like copying and pasting than plagiarism.
I mean, this is pretty much plagiarism, right? This is what it looks like, y'all.
Yeah.
Didn't quite change enough, in my opinion. Okay, so I want you to go to page. So you're going to go to the back page. This is page 5 for your page is page 6. Okay, so I'm going to break down the story elements for you. Okay, so the names are changed. That's a big difference. We've got Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Hades in the Greek version. We have Jupiter, Juno, Pluto, Neptune in the Roman version. Obviously, the where is the world of the gods, we assume thousands of years ago. Why? Why are we even reading this story? What is the purpose? Well, this myth shows the fallen nature of the gods and how they foolishly spend their time affecting innocence. You know, when we read Arachne and Athena, everyone, even though Arachne probably shouldn't have woven that in the tapestry, she was right. They were imperfect. They were flawed. So I want you to think about the how, which is the theme. And I want you to see if it's, ask yourself, is this relevant today? Because the gods were in a powerful position, they could wreak havoc in others' lives. They often didn't hesitate to do what pleased them without thinking about how their actions impacted others. I want you to think about world leaders. I want you to think about businessmen. Do they have the power to wreak havoc in others' lives?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you think it's possible that they often don't hesitate to do what pleases them? And they may, without thinking it through, affect other people adversely?
Yes.
Yeah. Who popped in your head when I thought of someone who has a lot of power, who wreaks havoc in the lives of others? Who popped into your head? Yeah, Putin. It could be Trump. It could be any. Well, okay, what business person did you think about?
I don't know if it's true or not, but maybe Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. He said Elon Musk. Okay, so our 7 main points in the plot arc. We set up our introduction here. Both Zeus and Jupiter are the gods who rule the heavens. They often needed a diversion to amuse themselves. So they're kind of shown as immature here. Well, I can turn myself into an octopus and go hang out with my brother under the sea, in the sea. I could visit my other brother, under the earth. I could throw thunderbolts, but it's not fun without a target. I can hang out with my wives, but I don't want to. But you know what? Instead, I'll just say, hey, stupid to two travelers and try to cause a fight. Doesn't paint them in a flattering light. But this is how our story begins. We have a problem really when they both spot Io, the river nymph. Um, in an attempt to hide their interest in Io from their often jealous wives, both gods create thick clouds to disguise what they're doing in seeking out Io's attention. Was this the same in both stories?
Yeah.
The rising action. Hera and Juno quickly realize their husbands are up to no good, and they check out why they sent thick clouds. And when they arrive, they notice a cow. Do you think they knew pretty much that cow was probably changed into a different form?
Yeah.
Neither wife is fooled. And then they cleverly ask, hey, can I have it as one says present, one says gift. They can't be refused. So they kind of have the power. So they put her under guard. And this is really the climax of the story, the turning point. The wives really have control of the situation. Io's fate is in the wives' hands. Our falling action, Io, of course, runs away. What's really interesting is Io fears the wives more than she does. She's more afraid of the wives, and rightly so, right? Who send gadflies after her to bite her? The wives, Hera and Juno. Yeah. And then our resolution. Here's an interesting thing. Why did Hera and Juno let her go?
Because they thought she'd had enough.
Okay. Was she like helping Zeus?
No.
She was innocent in all this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she just got noticed by them. She didn't do anything wrong, right? I think they punished her with the gadflies, but they recognized she just kind of got caught in the crossfire. Okay, go to your outline.
Okay.
And you're going to need to grab two highlighters. And the example was on the table.
I think they've already highlighted.
Okay, that's the example. Here, you get a new one. That's the example. Do you see where it says example?
Yeah.
So you get to grab two highlighters. There we go. So at home, we're just doing this in class. I've already done it for you on the outline that you're about to get. Okay, so the lead and the conclusion basically talk about the story. The lead and the conclusion come from here. You kind of get the story up to the point where pretty much to the climax in the lead, you summarize that version, and then you give the conclusion of the story in the conclusion of the essay. So what we're going to do today, our thesis, the Greek myth Zeus, Hera, and Little Io, has both obvious similarities and unique differences when compared to the Roman version. So we're going to do all of the similarities. So when we use comparing, highlight the word comparing. When comparing the two versions of the same story, there are three main important similarities. So we want to highlight comparing. You can use that one right next to you to make sure you get them all, and similarities. Okay, so were there more than three similarities in the story? I mean, 25? I don't want you to use mine. I think you can find three of your own similarities, don't you think?
Yeah.
So one way both stories are, highlight the word the same, is both Zeus and Jupiter, the king of all the gods, needed something to do to occupy their time. You could change that up to, acted very immature and juvenile in saying, hey, stupid, starting a fight.
I usually just copy and paste the first sentence, and then I give
Tweak it to fit your example, because I want you to use your examples. That's a good question.
Okay.
I think you've graduated enough that you could do that.
Thank you.
Just modify it. Kind of like what they did in the story. He said what he does is he usually uses my 1, 3, and 5. Well, let's not be like the Romans, Monoff. Let's make it our own from now on. What do you think? Take it, but modify it enough where it sounds like you and not me. Good plan?
Yeah.
I like this plan. Second way both myths highlight the word mirror each other is both Zeus and Jupiter were caught by their wives who suspect the cow's a woman. Now, this could be because of the clouds. This is because they see a white cow. You can do any version you want here. A third example of sameness, highlight the word sameness in both myths, is when after Io had suffered in both stories, the wives set her free and returned her to her original form. In both the Greek and Roman versions of the same story, there are remarkable consistent, highlight consistent scenes, which make them familiar. Okay, so there are a lot of similarities. You can choose any three that you want. Body 2, in contrast, so highlight the word, use a second highlighter, not the same color. Yeah, because we're contrasting. Let's contrast with a second color, don't you think? Readers can find three important differences to make the stories have varied meaning. So I'm going to show you in the story. I'm going to go back to page 2 in the Greek version. So you go back to page 2 in the Greek version. And I want to show you a really clear difference. It's midway down. Hera sent the cow away under guard. Zeus arranged for Io to be rescued and set free. He sent his son Apollo to sing the guard asleep. If you go to the Roman version, it sounds awfully similar. Jupiter arranged for Io to be rescued and set free. He sent his son Apollo to sing the guard to sleep. Okay, so that's pretty much the same. We're going to go back to page 2, and you'll notice this.
The end is different.
Hold on. The end is different too, but I'm going to go back and show you this. He sent his son Apollo to, okay, when the guard closed his eyes, Io ran away. That's the Greek version. If you go to the Roman version, it says Apollo flew Io back to her river, but he forgot to change Io back into human form. That's a really good difference. There's a lot to work with there. Manav, who's in here, he just said a great example. The ending is different. So if you go to the ending of the Greek version, Hera made Zeus promise he would never see Io again, changed Io back to human form, left her in Egypt. Okay, in the Roman version, we have some advice from Juno. She flew to Egypt, changed Io back into her original form, and said, "Find a husband, child," and quickly flew away, leaving poor Io in Egypt. So very different endings here. Okay, so if you're doing that in your outline and you're doing the ending, it really needs to be the third example. Make sure you're presenting ideas in chronological order. So one way both stories differ is the names of the character are changed except for Io. You can actually keep that one because that is really important. The names are changed. A second way both myths are unique from each other, is how Zeus flew down to Io on Earth in the Greek myth, while Jupiter brought Io up to visit him in the Roman myth. You know, that's not even a good difference. That's it. There's nothing to really back that up with. I wouldn't use that one. I would use a better difference. And I agree. I think the ending is better than what I put in the third example. How both myths are unrelated is the ending of the story. That's exactly what I would do. Even though both stories have striking, highlight the word differences, the overall changes add for fun details without modifying the overall message. Okay, so if you scroll down, turn the page to the example. Do not copy me. Do not plagiarize me. Put ideas in your own words. And I want to really encourage you. Maybe not even use my similarities or differences. Maybe try to find your own instead of copying, right? And then always write it from your wording. The only sentences really at this point you should be copying are topic and end sentences. Other than that, everything should be your own spin on it. So challenge yourself a little bit. I think you're ready. Yes? All right. And this concludes November, lesson number 3. And I will see you all get